Good morning,
Good
Singapore.
morning. Good morning, Malaysia. And we are, you could say we are aligned today since you're in blue and I'm in blue.
Kan?
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's right. Didn't plan it at all. And it's the end of July. Can you imagine? It's so fast that we have, we finished the whole month, right?
So quick, huh?
Ah,
This,
for
yeah,
you,
yeah.
is it quick for you given that you had COVID and that 2 weeks were like flat,
Yeah.
and yet you came for the shows?
I'm not too sure that I think the whole year has been quick for me.
That's true.
But COVID went faster, right, during COVID. So it's like now, like I suddenly remembered how it feels to wake up
Mm.
and know that 10 days has passed.
Ah,
Because
okay.
you sleep on a particular day and then you feel like you wake up on another day. That's 10 days
Mm.
later. And then you know how on it at other times when you're not sick, you wait for every passing hour. But this one, the 10 days have passed and you woke up and 10 days has passed, you know. So even when you asked me about the show and all of that, it's like
Blur.
yeah, I was automated, right? It's a show.
Not
Um,
that we could see that, not that I could see that anyway, but then it could be because of, being in the show. It's like, okay, let's make it happen.
and that's
There
just
you
that
go.
1 hour performance time, right? So go do it, and I was just grateful that I could get up for the show, right? And anyway, thank God I have
Purpose.
food for my partner.
Yes, and thank God my partner was there, COVID or not. So there you go.
Nice.
ah, nice, nice. So we are wrapping up July today. We don't have a guest as usual because this week is wrap up week. The guest is Malar and me in full doses, 100%. All right. Whether it's 50-50 or another ratio, we don't know. You figure it out at the end of of this show. And July, it's all about purpose. And I think it's important for us to, as usual, when we do a wrap up, connect the dots between our guests for the month and also put some context around how we think about purpose, how we think about purpose, how we want to contextualize purpose from a perspective of life as well as work. So let's start get into it because I think we've got quite a bit of things to cover. That's you and me again. Haha. Okay. I'm so happy that Kirtana found this article. It's from McKinsey. So for those of you who'd like to go and read the article in full, it's an article in McKinsey that's titled "Help Your Employees Find Purpose or Watch Them Leave." And it says that we just took this extract. Employees expect that their jobs to bring a significant sense of purpose to their lives. Employers need to help meet this need, or what? Malal, can you read it off because I can't see?
Be prepared to lose talent to companies that will.
Okay. And so that's an interesting insight. It's not like as if it's new, kan? Malal, it's something that's, I would say, obvious or common sense. Yet sometimes we miss the obvious, right? Or the common sense. The common sense don't become so common anymore. Yes, Mallory, about to say something.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about common sense. This is not
Mm,
new for sure, because whenever
mm,
we do corporate culture change work, this is what we're trying to do in many ways. I mean, why do companies have vision, mission, and values? Right?
mm,
Because we're
mm,
trying to bring a group of people for a common
mm,
purpose, right?
mm,
But I do think that so why am I not sure whether it's common sense? Uh, because I think we get confused about the idea of purpose being, you know, how people disregard feelings at work.
Mm,
There's
mm,
enough statistics to say feelings are important.
mm,
But in practice, we don't accept it.
mm. When you say disregard feelings in work, are you talking about when you're angry about something, it's not okay for you to be angry or to demonstrate the anger?
Yeah, but so if you think about passion, for example, like
Mm,
when we recruit, we say we want to recruit for passionate people,
mm,
right?
mm,
But if someone is passionate about something, they would be disappointed when their ideas are not accepted or not heard. They become
mm,
demoralized,
mm.
right? And we
Yep.
don't address it, right? Because we think that it is your problem to deal with your emotions, because this negative, difficult emotions are not allowed at work because you're supposed to be a professional. So
Yep.
I find that we are we pick and choose with the double standards.
What do you, yeah, yeah. We want a passionate professional, but you deal with your frustrations if your ideas are not taken up by yourself. Don't bring it out and with the team to do it. Got it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right. So
Mm, mm,
and in I love this is like I don't know whether this might be the most important and most favorite topic of mine. So when it
mm,
comes to purpose, so I think in the past, I think last month we shared some numbers about what happens to organizations that's very purpose centric, and you
mm,
know how Simon Sinek is like a superstar in this area. Know
mhm.
your why. So it's not that
Yep.
we don't have, Simon Sinek's video is one of the most watched video, right? So we know
Yep.
the why is important. It's not that we
Mm,
don't know, right? But whether that's incorporated in our daily work, whether we see that as important,
mm,
not just in a motivational talk or a town hall, but really connecting the dots. And what I've known is that with the corporate culture change work that we do, when organizations see it, then they will actually do it. Right, they will do a corporate culture change work is a lot, right? But I think
mm,
what is now even more evident now, which I think clients or rather employers are forced to look at, is post COVID, the importance and the urgency of this has gone
yep.
up.
Agreed.
During COVID, most people have experienced it's a life changing experience, whether you were hit
Mm,
by COVID or not. But death was so close, insecurity was so close, losses were so
mm.
close that you cannot say you were not changed by the experience, right? Which
True.
is why,
True.
yeah, which is why we're talking about great resignation. There's a lot of pressure now on employers to say, okay, already before COVID it was difficult to attract talent, and when we talk about talent, we're not talking about seats on the in that the getting people to meet the numbers, right? We can meet numbers because there are a lot of people who are not employed, but we're talking about talents, people who bring their hearts and minds to work
Mm,
with
mm.
clarity, right?
Nice one.
With
Yeah,
clarity, right? Because
yeah, that's right.
yeah, you want them to be very clear. You want them to come and contribute. You want them to make the most. You want them to bring optimal performance. And to bring the whole self to work. Yet you need to make sure their well-being is taken care of, right? So that's quite a number of things coming together, and you need to make sure it's a happy place. And purpose is, I would say, like the center of perhaps all we do, the reason we start business, the reason we
Mm,
want to work as individuals, right? Most
correct.
businesses start with an aspiration to make a difference, and that's purpose. So, this article, what I liked about this article is really there's so much of information as to data to say how actually purpose will drive our people and
Yep.
the business positively is what it is. Anyway,
Yes,
I went
yep.
to
And we're going to go into some of that data. We plucked out a few of that, um, some areas of data. Data, yeah. What am I saying? Data, and we're going to look at that. But before we do that, I think it's important for us to recap the three areas we touched on, the three specific areas we touched on this month around purpose. We had three speakers, guests. All right, we had Nirmala, who talked about household income and resilience. We had Sharol, who talked about coaching, how coaching can be used to help us entrench ourselves, find, relocate meaning, relocate purpose, and tie it together with the organization and organization's purpose. And then we had Vinita last week, and she talked about how education is core to sustainability. So if you want to sustain anything, whether it's an organization, it's a project, it's a country, education, forms the focus of that. So I'm going to start off with my take on the three, and then I'll hand it over to you, right? So for me, I think, for me, the two first and the last shows, which was about financial resilience and education, that was very intuitive to me. Okay, that. And because both are very close to my heart, and in my LinkedIn posts just before each program show, I shared a particular episode that happened in my life, right, around it. What was a little bit of finding a match was the coaching. However, thinking about today, in preparing for today's session, and I'm thinking about the three shows, I realized that coaching doesn't, you know what, you and I, whenever we have a conversation, to me, that's coaching. Not whenever, but when we have, something that we are grappling with, and I have a conversation with you, or, the others in my close circle. In a way, it is coaching because, it's not just friends. You ask questions, you get me to think about things differently. It is, in a way, a form of coaching, right? And the idea of a mentor doesn't have to be something that it's done by the company. The organization doesn't have to say, go find a mentor. I mean, we can find a mentor. We can look for that person that we want to emulate, right? And that person might change in your different stages of life, and and go and shadow that person and model that person and see what it is that the person is doing. So I made my peace with coaching. Financial resilience is for me very, very important for me right now. And I thought Nirmala did, and the work that they are doing at APKP is very, very important. AKP set up. Very, very important. Education as a foundation and as a way of continuous growing is also very, very important. I think what I took away, my takeaway was that coaching is something that we do. We just don't realize that it's coaching, or we go and seek that person who can be our coach in instances that we need that support. Malar, your takeaway.
Yeah, thank you. So I think more than my takeaway, I would say that I had new insights, and of course, all three of them got me to think about my purpose, especially in this show, a lot more, right? Because I think when Nirmala spoke, what was interesting for me, whenever we do work, when we ask people why do you work, the first reason people say it's because of money, right? Money being such an important element because that has become the exchange for life, right? For whatever you want, whether you want health or a lifestyle or even your basic needs, money is the currency, right? So whenever when you run programs, when we're talking about motivation, when we say, why do you join the company? Why do you do the job? The obvious thing is money, right? And I think when Nirmala shared about household financial education, what was very, very clear is that it's so important, yet we don't talk about it. We don't
Mm.
talk about it.
Mm.
We don't get educated about money, how the
No, because
systems.
I think we think we are educated about money. I think that's a fallacy that we hold.
We assume,
Mm.
it's like
Mm. Mm.
communication, right? Because
Mm.
communication is so central in relationship, but it's something we don't pay attention to in our education system, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
financial education, I think, is core, because if, especially for in organizations, because we need to start thinking about, do we actually understand, why we're doing what we're doing? Because you are using your money to very much meet your purpose, right?
Mm.
You
Mm.
need to do that with really financial education, right? So I thought that was like the statistics, the numbers that she shared was really mind-boggling, because we don't think so. It's a lot of unconscious habits that may not be
Mm.
useful, that gets us into financial trouble, which then
Mm.
takes you away from your purpose, right? Because on one hand, we want purpose to live a meaningful life, but a lot of meaning is attached to money. And if you don't learn how to manage money, one has to go, right? So do you go after the money, or
Mm.
do you go for the purpose?
Mm.
And you're torn in
Mm.
between. So I thought that was so powerful. And I think organizations should educate employees on financial education, so that employees begin to take control on how to they make educated choice about how they use their money. Because otherwise,
Mm.
every time people get promoted, for example, or they get their yearly increment, you would
The
realize that
struggle still the struggle still
even
continues, right?
increases, right? Because I upgrade my
Yep.
car, I upgrade my house, I upgrade my lifestyle. And there
Correct.
will always be in the space of, I don't have enough. And when I don't have enough, I'll be dissatisfied.
Yeah. It's for me it's a little bit funny, right? What do I mean by funny? I recently read somewhere, I can't remember where, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is passé. It's no longer relevant. But the more we have these shows and the more we talk to our guests, I think it is still very relevant, right? Like you said, you self at the end is your self actualization, right? If you take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but you can't get there if this part is pulling you down, right? This part, your brain, it always pulls your brain to that space, and you're still sitting in that space. How do you want to progress up? So yeah, it may be simple. Maybe it's not relevant these days in this complex world that we live in. Sometimes the simple, I think, is gives us more insights than the more complex things.
Actually, Maslow is my most favorite, because I think
Yeah.
it never lost its relevance. Because when we're doing Maslow in the workshops that we do, is this right? When you talk about physiological needs, right? Need for shelter.
Mm,
I think the
mm,
need has taken a a different form, right?
mm.
So
Yep.
if
Yep.
you look at young graduates, right? So when I don't know about you, but I'm sure, like for me, when I came to KL and I started working, physiological need means being able to rent a room, share a room, right? We
Mm,
went from
mm.
that. But today, physiological needs for young graduates means that I must be able to live in a Soho unit on my own, right? Now, think about safety needs, right? How much we pay for insurance, and we don't realize that's
Mm,
what we're paying for, safety,
mm.
right? And during
Yep.
COVID, you could have had all the money in the world. You could say,
Yep.
I'm a self actualized person. But when COVID hit, we all got back to basics, didn't we?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, so I
Exactly.
think it takes different forms, and we don't think
Mm.
about and it takes different forms. Actualization takes different forms. Esteem takes different forms, because
Different form.
the forms
Yep.
around us has actually changed. Anyway, so that's on Maslow. Maybe we should do one just on Maslow during one of our wrap ups, right?
Yeah.
So Nirmala said that, and of course, Vinita. For me, what was outstanding about Vinita is her passion for talent that may not look like talent to
Talent.
employees,
Yep. Yep. That's
right?
right.
She is working with the I would say, the underprivileged, right? Where, talent doesn't come with good English, talent doesn't come with
With
the typical
polish and
professional
look.
polish.
Yeah.
So she was dealing with that, and I thought that's really important, because when we talk about talent, we have an idea of a talent, and how do we now? I think she brought in a very important question. Number one is actually, what is the purpose of education, and are we staying true to the purpose of education? Because on
Mm,
one hand, in Malaysia, we're having more graduates, i.e.,
mm,
education. On the other hand, employers are saying that our graduates are not employable.
mm,
What
mm,
happening is, so I think she's brought in a very important aspect of education. Why? And I think for in organizations, it's important for us to also think about, when we think about learning and education and growth and self-learning and whatever not, right? I think we still need to go back to purpose. Why am I doing this for my employees? What's the purpose of this particular education for my employees, and bring it back, right?
yeah. It, I think it takes different forms in different countries, right? In Singapore, um, it's the similar thing happens, but for a for different reasons, or the cause is different, right? The effect is the same. So if you come from X university or from university, are you therefore deemed better as a better fit compared to someone who's graduated from polytechnic, for example,
Mm.
or went through polytechnic, then went into a university outside? Then there's university in Singapore versus universities outside, right? So there's education, there's access to education. Then there is a question of the different types of education, right? In other countries, it could be, you speak English, but someone speaks English with an American accent versus someone who speaks English with a local accent, right? And how do we see that, right? How do we see that from a context of fit, right, with the organization? Yeah, so I think it takes different forms in different countries. The challenge or the struggle is a little bit different. Yeah.
And I think, which
Mm.
is why the idea of purpose becomes even more important, because when we do what we do, right, we need to bring it back to purpose. In fact, what you just said actually is very much the core of diversity and inclusion.
Mm.
When we are talking to people and we're judging people for the way they speak, are we I mean, that's already bias
Yep.
against them, all right, because you're
Yep.
holding a picture of what a great talent or a great mind sounds like and look like, and you miss out
Mm.
on the content. I thought that, so that's still bothering me,
Yep.
because I know there's some truth, but we also know that, and when it comes to diversity and inclusion, that's something that we don't talk about. We talk about external forms, right, but we
Mm.
don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about the
The
internal one.
mind.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I thought that
Correct.
was one. Like, that's a question that's like lingering in my head. I still haven't found peace with Vinita's inputs.
Mm.
She has
Mm.
triggered me. And Cheryl was interesting for me. My biggest takeaway from Cheryl's session was, even top leaders need to be made to feel secure. So
Mm.
I loved, absolutely loved that from Shahrul, because he's talking about top leadership, and how they make sure that they put a lot of things right to make leaders feel safe, because I think
Mm.
that's something that's ignored, specifically at the leadership space, because we assume
Mm.
leaders feel secure, right? And I
Mm.
thought that was brilliant. And the way they went about the process, they did all the things that need to be done to
To make it safe.
to make it safe, to make it
Mm.
voluntary, to make it
Mm.
confidential. And that's where
Mm.
growth really takes place, because
Correct.
eventually people won't need it, because they already know it's a safe space.
Mm.
I
Correct.
thought that was brilliant, right? And all
Yeah.
three of them actually bring us back to the question of, how do we actually make a difference and live our purpose, right? So now I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, if we think about, if education and finances comes together, if we are educated, and if you get the
Mm,
right coach and mentor, can you imagine the kind of choices that we will be making, right?
mm.
Which
Yep.
then brings us to I wanted to share this, right? This is one of my favorite books, Lost Connection, but Johann Hari. Yeah, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Now, he hit me because during COVID, we were talking about depression going up, mental health issues going up, and it's ongoing.
Mm,
We know it's going to be one of the top issues for us. Now, what he did is he did a research and he looked at how, people who have mental health issues, end up taking medication, right?
mm,
Now,
mm,
do we need medication? Of course, sometimes, maybe. But what he found was this, right? He found that the reason people got depressed, right, is because they actually lost a connection with it. And so, what are these
mm,
connections? Is what is really important. So when I speak to people who feel down and low and depressed, I'm now able to now figure out what is actually bothering them, right? So he talks about meaningful work. So it's amazing, right? Meaningful work and meaningful values. In June, I think we spoke about values, right? So why values are important and how we are connected to our values. And when you have to live your life in a way that where you disconnect with your values, or you disconnect with meaningful work, or you disconnect with people, right? During COVID, we would have realized, we wouldn't have like realized how the conversation at tea break makes the whole load of difference.
mm.
How turning to your colleague and saying, you know what, my daughter did this today, gives you so much of joy, excitement, and relief. We don't realize it until we start working from home, and after a while, it hits us that, oh my gosh, that coffee conversation actually kept me going,
Unless you've
right?
been
So,
working from home for 20 years and then, that's different. But then again, it's not actually, because for those of us who are used to working from home, WhatsApp has been a great boon, right?
mm,
So the equivalent of turning around and looking at this is, okay, I'm going to send this to Malar, and ching, 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 and it goes off to Malar. To me, it's as good as turning around and saying, Malar, what did Gautam do today? Um, all right. So it is. We just find different forms of doing it. Right?
yeah.
Someone to
And
connect.
then when you talk to people who've been working in an organization, I think Gallup asked the question whether you have a best friend at work,
Mm,
right? Because when we think about engagement, it's just not work, it is the relationships, right? So, and when we talk about relationships with people, we undermine the importance of the small, meaningful conversations that we
mm,
have that mean something to me, right? So, if I like, for example, talking about a book, right? I
mm,
find a lot of
mm,
joy going for coffee and talking about a book, for example, right? So, and these
mm.
are things that already exist in your structure when you're working, in your normal social life, depending on how you live your life, right? And
Yep.
when you don't have that, that's a disconnect, is what they're saying here.
Mm,
So we don't
mm.
realize how we're connected to people and how they're contributing to our meaning. All right. Of
Yep.
course, childhood trauma is something that we all understand. So if you come from a traumatic background, right? And
Chop, 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 chop. When you said we all understand, I have to say this, and if you think you say you don't understand because you don't have it, you're kidding yourself, right? But that's another conversation and something for you to go and think about. Okay, back to you, Mother.
okay, I like it when you behave like me. Cannot tahan, must talk one.
Mhm.
Now, childhood trauma, I mean, we know trauma affects us. So if you realize that you've experienced a childhood trauma in your growing years, right? Especially in your forming years, some major event, the best is to find healing, because there's enough study to say that even leaders who are very toxic actually have a traumatic background. And that's another big story for another
Sorry.
day, right? Because
Yep.
I think, for me, one of those things in organizations is, when we say I don't want to, sometimes we say it's not even professional to ask if someone is married
Mm.
or their
Mm-hmm.
background around, I have
Mm.
issues with that, right? Because
Yep.
I want to know where you come from and how your experience has shaped you, because that's the person I'm hiring,
Yep.
right? So that's a big thing on childhood trauma, and I think that's pretty clear. Status and respect, where
Mm.
people feel that if you feel you need a status, so if you're not associated to status and respect, so think about people who have been a center of a personality for an organization or a brand, to be disassociated to that, right, can make be a major disconnect. I think at an individual level, we when we talk about emptiness syndrome, right, when our kids
Mm.
stop needing us, we feel it, right? That it's a disconnect with your identity as a person, right? Then they talk about natural world, especially if you come from a space where there was a lot of nature, you were exposed to nature, and then you come to the city, people actually feel depressed, right? Now, the second last one, I think, is what we all probably are experiencing, right? With so much of noise about inflation and how the economy is going to be more challenging, whether we all have a hopeful and secure future, whether we
Mm.
feel hopeful about the future, right? And of course, the last one, role of genes and brain changes, I think that's more physical. And if we look at the first seven is something that our job provides.
Oh,
And
we can influence.
exactly. And,
Mm.
and I think organizations are doing this in different forms for sure, right? Recognition, how we have advocates for the nature, right?
Mm.
For
Mm.
the for ecological, you know um,
ESG, as we
ESG,
call it.
yeah,
So, yeah. Mm.
right. So all of this is happening, but I'm not sure whether we're bringing it together and whether individuals know what is their connection or disconnection.
I think, not I think, it is happening. So to just draw on you, it is happening, but it's happening separate from each other. So they're not interlinked.
Mm,
And they're not linked to the organizational purpose as well as the individual's purpose. I think those are missing links that need to be addressed, because what organizations seem to be doing is that they are having pockets of this happening, and maybe they're not either connecting them, all the seven, in different ways to see how they all link up, or they're not connecting them to the purpose of either the organization or the individual. So that's an that's interesting to evaluate and see, are we or are we not doing that linking
mm,
up?
mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is just like a Maslow's theory, right? I
Mm.
think if we can, in our conversations, begin to um, listen into what is important for that person, and to see whether whatever that's important for the person, whether the person is still connected to it, will be a great indicator to know how people are experiencing life, and how that could cause a disconnection for them, and
Mm.
demotivation, and eventually depression, because he's talking about depression in this book. Nice.
Mm.
which
Shall we
which is
move?
really, yeah, which is really interesting,
Mm.
which goes on to our next slide, again
Mm.
from McKinsey. I thought this was brilliant, because when
Yeah.
we think about purpose, right, I think purpose in personal life can be quite straightforward. uh,
Mm.
in fact, yesterday I was at UNITA talking to a group of young people, right? And so there was a question that was thrown to me. I don't know what happened to me. So they said, they asked me why students skip classes.
Oh, okay.
And I was thinking, why do you ask me whether
Ask me. Why you see classes?
you are skipping classes, right? And and so what was interesting, one of the data they shared was, in I think tweeted 3.1 million. This is US students who tweeted and said why they skip classes. The top reason that was given to them is they don't have the mood. I don't
Mm.
feel like it.
Mm. No
And
mood.
no mood. And then I quickly laughed and I said, I don't remember skipping class, number one. Number two, I don't think I even thought I had a choice to be moody, to make such choices.
Mm, mm.
I said that. So I said, I can't relate to this, but I do know that the one thing that kept me going is that I went for every class, even though I didn't know what was happening and I got punished and I stood outside the class because that was my only ticket out of poverty.
Mm,
And that was my purpose. So for me, education had a purpose because it was my ticket.
mm.
And then I looked at the young people and I said, do you actually really have a purpose for your education? Or is it something that you're doing because everybody's doing it? And
Nicely done.
yeah, and I think only three or four people put up their hand to say that they have a purpose. And mind you, these kids don't come from, most of the kids are from average or below average, the lower
Rich
below average, or
mm,
B14.
income.
Right? Now, so can you imagine it's got comfortable that even for them, they don't see why they need to do what they need to do. So I said, okay, since you've decided you'll skip class, can you skip class and go and look for your purpose?
Good.
And then
Nicely done.
once you find your purpose, you may not want to skip class anyway.
Classes anymore. Yeah, right. That's right. I my purpose for not skipping classes in primary and secondary school because I was totally afraid my father, who was a teacher, will find out that I'm skipping classes because probably somebody in school would probably know my father and therefore tell me. In university, I skipped classes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I skipped classes because I'm bloody lazy. That's basically it.
Seriously?
Yeah, I was lazy. But I had a purpose, but I was lazy. Anyway, I achieved the purpose, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone. And I
Yeah,
knew the yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew the person that I could go and say, "Can I get your note?"
yeah. Okay. No, my problem is even when I go for classes, I don't understand what's happening. I need tutoring from my friends. Imagine if I don't go for classes. Anyway, so I thought that I think when we think about purpose, I think we all have purpose anyway. But whether we are connected to our purpose and whether
Mm.
we are aware of the purpose is
Oh,
something that we need to
yeah.
find
We
out, right?
need to find out. Yeah, exactly. Was the purpose crafted for you, or was it something that you co-crafted with, your parents at that point in time, if you're, in school, or it's, yeah, you're just taking it and running with it because that's what you've been told from, the start of time, for example. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when it
Mm.
comes to purpose, so the way I think about it is this, right? In life, we are involved in activities anyway.
Mm. Mm.
When we are involved in activities meaningfully, the kind of commitment we put into it is different, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, the way we feel about ourselves is different.
Mm.
So if I am going to, you know how when I speak to women who don't, who are not, who are considered non-ambitious, right?
Mm.
I just want to come to work because this money is going to help, give us a better lifestyle as a family. I want to contribute to the family income, for example, right? We
Mm.
undermine their purpose because that keeps them really, really motivated to make sure they give their best from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 because sharp 5 o'clock or whatever the time is, they pack up and they are ready to go home, right?
Yep.
And so we are involved in activities, but when we are involved in meaningful activities and we connect that to us, we feel good about ourselves, right? So
Mm.
can you imagine, one day you're not, you're not having a great day and you're back at home and you don't feel like going to work the next morning. Your purpose makes you wake up again. That's where, some parents will tell you, when I'm demoralized, very simple. I just look at my children's photo and I know I need to get up and get going. Right? So
Mm.
that's purpose, right? Purpose is why I do what I do and how it makes me feel as a person. I feel fulfilled as a person. I feel I'm living a meaningful life. What I like about this particular piece of work, and again, you can go and have a look at the McKinsey report, is that
Mm.
we draw purpose in most activities that we do. right? So here what they're doing is that they're looking at an individual whose purpose is totally aligned, right? So we find purpose from the organization. This is where vision, mission, values, and
Mm.
connecting it. So this is why some organizations do great orientation work at
Mm.
interview level. You know how we often say this, when you first join a great company, when people ask you where you're working, you will stand with pride and say, "Do you know I'm working here?"
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
right. That's how I felt when I got a job with the central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia.
Bank
When I,
Negara, yeah.
because I was a clerk in the bank when I joined them, right? And but when I go back to my hometown or wherever, just wearing the pass gave me status. People go, "What? You're working with the Central Bank of Malaysia?" You go like, "Yeah." But in my heart, I'm thinking, you don't know I'm a clerk, because that doesn't matter. So when you talk about purpose, so one is, do I know how I make a difference in the organization?
Mm.
And I think that's when Nirmala, said how she joined the organization and then she found her purpose, right?
Yep.
Because,
Yep.
yeah, because she's liberating families, number one. Now,
Mm.
purpose from work is interesting. This is where we're passionate about what we are doing, the actual activity or the work,
Job.
your job description that you're actually
Sure.
doing. So some
Yep.
of us find our job meaningful, but we don't know how our job makes a difference in the organization. How it
Organization. Yep.
contributes. So when I
Correct.
do say customer service program, right, people who are frontliners are more clear about how they are serving the organizational purpose compared to what
Mm.
we call support staff,
Mm.
right? Because if I'm a frontliner, I know I'm serving my customer for a purpose of the organization. But
Yep.
when I'm a back end staff, I may not know that I'm serving the customer,
Or
right?
how you're serving the customer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times, when we speak to managers and leaders, they don't know how they're actually serving their employees. So they
Mm.
get purpose from work, which is, I know I'm a leader, I'm the head of department, I know I make a difference, but
Mm.
I don't know how that my role, I need to serve my employees to find their own purpose too. And this is why conversations becomes very important. Of course, then
Got
there's
it.
purpose outside work, where we do voluntary work, where we probably guide our children, where we have hobbies, right? So we have purpose everywhere we go. And if you look at people who are very, very successful, they have a very active life, and they choose how they spend their time because they know how these activities are meaningful for them and how it adds value for them at the identity level, right? So
Mm.
what I think is very much, what I liked about this is aligning for us to think about, do I know my purpose at work? Do I know how my
Yep.
job makes the difference? And do I know how my job contributes to the organization, the bigger purpose of the organization? Right?
Mm.
And in my other activities out of work, do I know what meaning it actually has?
Giving to me. Yeah. Yeah, it has. I just want to go back to that word you use, active life, right? I think we need to clarify that an active life doesn't mean a life full of jumping from one activity to another activity, right? An active life meaning participating in life actively rather than letting it happen to you, as opposed to the amount of activity or the frequency of. Okay,
Yeah. So,
that
I mean,
bring yeah,
yeah, sorry,
carry
I
on.
want to just add on to that, right? So if you think so, we typically do team building programs, and we have
Mm,
two types of clients who come to us and say, we just want to have fun, nothing serious,
yeah,
I don't want people to
yeah,
feel uncomfortable. And then you
yep.
have another group of clients says, we want to really bond at a deep level, and we need to do whatever it takes. So sometimes, if you look at how we evaluate activities, we just measure
Mm,
the fun, we don't measure meaning.
me, yep,
So in any
yep.
activities that we do at work, fun becomes such a big thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should have fun, but doesn't mean fun need to take away the meaning that we're experiencing. So we can have meaning with fun,
Mm,
right? And
yep.
that's something I think a lot of times organizations tend to miss, because we think when it's meaningful, it has to be
Has to
serious,
be serious. Yes, correct. Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And this piece of information is really important. And how the study shows that top basically people who are in management know
Senior
how to live
leadership. Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
leadership, they know
Mm.
how to live their purpose, because it's obvious, right? You
Mm.
are heading a department, you know what's the purpose of your department, and you're talking to top leaders, so the kind of conversation that's happening for them uh, keeps them in that space, so that's why they feel important. All right.
Mm. Mm.
Now, this one was a surprise for me, right? So if we look at the one on the right, frontline managers and frontline employees, 85% of frontline managers and frontline employees are unsure or disagree that they can live their purpose in their day-to-day work.
Mm.
So this means, and so frontliners are, I will say, the life wire of the business, right? Because you are the brand ambassador for your business. And to know that 85% of them don't know how they make a difference to the organization. Mm.
Mm.
I thought this was mind blowing, but it makes sense, right? It makes a lot of sense why service fails in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a production line mentality, right? You're just supposed to produce and move it from this part of the line to this part of the line, and someone else takes over and then produces. It's almost, it gives me, that's the mental picture that comes into play when I see this data, and it's like you chug along and you do your work, right? But what we fail to realize is that this 85% that's disconnected from what it means to the organization, how it fulfills a bigger role. It's like the arteries and the veins in your body that take the blood and the oxygen and feeds right all the organs like the 85% in senior managers so that they can do the work that they need to do, right? So if you get that this veins and arteries, if they are disconnected, what then does it do for a body versus what then does it do to the organization? Yeah.
And this is really also interesting because we do engagement surveys within organizations, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
it tells you really how people feel, right? How engaged they feel to their jobs,
mm,
right? And that's something. So recently, I had a client who came and said, can you do a motivational talk, right? Whatever. And I said, so why do you need to do a motivational talk? Are your people
mm,
demotivated, right?
mm,
And my client said, well, we don't think they are demotivated. So I said, so what do you want to motivate them for? And my client said, to achieve a particular result. I said, right. And I said, why do you think they need to be motivated? Do they believe
mm,
in the goal? And there was a bit of a silence. And my client said, yeah. I said, so you have everything in, so why do you need to motivate them? And when
mm,
we actually, spoke about it and all of that, we realized that people were not connected to the goal, right? Because they don't actually believe, they think the goal is impossible.
mm.
And then my question is, does your management that's coming out with the numbers believe that it's possible?
Possible.
And then I won't tell you what they said.
Mm,
Because now, so and then we have these conversations, right, that we put up a particular front, and then what happens is that we miss out on connecting
mm.
it for our people,
People.
because
Yeah. We
because
think
when we
it's
are,
obvious. Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's obvious. It thinks it's logical. People will be able to make the connection, right? It removes the emotions from that we remove the emotions from the connection,
Mm,
right? We keep it to a logical connection, right? We hit X last year. X plus 40% is easy enough for us to understand why we're going in that direction. So, just go ahead and do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agree.
so that's interesting. Anyway, so let's look at the next slide, because I think the next slide
Mm,
has got really very important information, right? From you can see this is fantastic. So basically, if we look at the black dots, respondents who get some purpose. That means they know the work is important. I know my job is important, but want more. That means they're not feeling totally fulfilled. Or in our language, we'll say they're not in flow. You know, they know something is missing, that their best self is not coming through. Right. The one
Mm.
in blue are respondents who get as much purpose from work as they would like. That means they feel fulfilled at work. That means they bring their flow states at work, perhaps even overuse, I suspect, right?
Mm.
And so what we can actually see is this, right? People who are, who get as much purpose have higher energy, greater satisfaction, greater health, greater resilience, greater pride, greater satisfaction, greater commitment, greater engagement, greater achievement, greater connection, and greater excitement. Now, these are things that we try and do in so-called motivational programs and team building
Programs
programs,
or team building programs. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
ongoing engagement, right? And all we need to do from the stats is that connect them to the purpose, help them
Mm.
to find the connection. Is what it's saying, and I hope, like, it's so
Mm.
straightforward. Let's just do it, right? We
Yeah.
can't You can't tell why purpose is more important, after seeing this.
Okay, I'm going to say something controversial. I think leaders find it a lot easier and to deal with. Let's send them for skills program, right, or a team building program, than have a conversation that might be difficult.
And I think, I won't say all leaders. I happen to work with leaders whom I usually respect and love, right? And I think that's why, first and foremost, we need to figure out whether leaders are connected to the organizational purpose, whether leaders have purpose,
True.
right? Because
Yeah.
if we bring in leaders to meet numbers, that's the behavior you'll see throughout the organization,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas, when we talk about, I mean, very simply said, right? If you're recruiting, for example, if you're recruiting to meet the job description, then it's easier to meet the numbers, right?
Correct.
But
Yeah.
if you're recruiting to really be true to the process of bringing in talent, you need people to bring their hearts to work. It's a lot more hard work,
Mm.
a lot more
Correct.
complexity, a
Yep.
bit more time consuming, but it has got long term benefits.
Correct. Agreed. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
just put the word there, all, like, it's like a trigger to never. You can say all. Yeah.
and that brings us
Um,
to yeah.
yeah, the putting it all together, right? In a
Yeah.
different
So
form. Yeah.
this one, maybe actually, again, this is from the McKinsey, and I just thought, the first one, Nicole, purpose is aligned
Mm,
with and fulfilled with her company's purpose, and I just wanted to just share with you a story. I mean, this it's been
mm,
more than 12 years. More, I think 15 years ago, I did a program for a hospital, right? And
mm,
I was doing focus group interviews, and I
mm,
was so excited to meet specialists because they're so clever, right? And then we were are also interviewing the cleaners, right? And what was really interesting is I was inspired by what the cleaners said. So when we were talking about purpose and do you know how you make a difference, how your job makes a difference, the cleaners very interestingly said, this to me, because their toilets were known to be clean, really
mm,
clean. So when we asked them, so, how do you keep this high standard? And they said, we know our job is to make sure people who come in here are safe and leave the place safe, which is why we need to keep this place clean enough so that people feel safe when they come into the
mm,
hospital. So
mm,
what? And I was like, my, blown. And they are really very proud. They get very
mm,
upset when the toilet is not clean. Number one. Number two, I think their sense of purpose in their personal life was very clear because they took a lot of pride in being part of this big brand. The hospital was a big brand. So they were
mm,
very grateful to be able to work in this particular organization, the brand, the pride, and also how the organization offered them a secured job because they now
mm,
know that they have a secured regular income to elevate the family life, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah, their purpose in life, right? Yeah.
very, very, very clear. That's what I've seen.
Mm,
I didn't get the same effect from the very top, unfortunately,
mm,
right? Because
That's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was. It really got me to rethink about how we tend to think certain jobs are so purposeful. I think some people
Mm,
get carried away. May not be fair
mm,
to make a sweeping general statement, but that was my experience. So whenever I'm
mm,
demoralized and I'm feeling like, oh, my work is, I'm feeling demotivated, I think about the cleaners in this hospital, right?
I
Now,
think the
mm,
we were talking about this profile, right? And we said it looks like the the model profile to have in an employee or a team member. Um, the thing that we might miss about this profile is that you know, when there's a major change, we sometimes tend to assume that this profile will remain the same way. And if there's a major change in direction or focus or even the purpose, a slight change in the purpose of the organization, I think we need to all make sure that this group that has this profile, they're aligned. If not, if you have the assumption that they will follow along, I think that can be potentially dangerous
yeah.
because there is a shift somewhere. Yep. Okay,
Yeah,
Madeline.
and this is also true, right? Because sometimes the most committed employees sometimes becomes demoralized with a new leader or a new sense of
Yeah,
direction, right?
correct,
In
correct.
fact, I think I'm going to take this moment because I'll do Nancy and Catherine very quickly. I know we're
Mm,
running short of time. I was doing work for a pharmaceutical company and they were in
mm,
research, right? We did the flow profiler. And the manager said, my people are all purpose driven. And when we actually did the profile, their purpose was the lowest. We were shocked. He was shocked
mm,
because he
mm,
knew his employees like that. He said, how can
mm,
this be, right? Their purpose was low, the growth was low.
mm,
And that's not how he remembered his employees. But he knows that they were demotivated. Long story short, when we actually went and digged into the story, what we found out was that they joined the organization for purpose and growth. These are doctors.
mm, mm,
And because the organization had gone through a restructuring and 50% of the employees and it's basically lean organization, they had to do
mm,
admin work or other type of
mm,
work which took away their love. So they brought down their purpose, lost their meaning, became demoralized and expected to be paid more because they
mm,
weren't enjoying the work.
mm,
And so that was like really mind blowing for me because
mm,
sometimes when people say they're not connected to the purpose, you will find that that's when you get people to do work that they don't enjoy, they expect higher rewards, greater rewards. And that's something, if people are listening in, I think it's something to think about when you're talking to your employees. Because when you give meaningful work, you should pay them fairly, but reward doesn't
mm.
become the top most important criteria
Topmost driver,
if
correct.
you are paying them fairly. Huh?
Fairly. Yep. 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 Yep.
Now,
That's a very important clause if we are
fairly.
paying them.
Don't make use of them. Right?
Mm,
Then you will find Nancy and Catherine, right? Nancy is aligned to the company's purpose but isn't feeling fulfilled by it in her work. So she's
mm,
connected to the big picture, but she's not getting this daily fulfillment in her daily task that she's doing, right? So think about, an example will be teachers, right? How in Malaysia, teachers will love teaching. You give them admin work, we've
yeah,
lost.
and I was going to say the same thing here, right? I think what we're seeing in Singapore is teachers jumping off the bandwagon, right? And we are having a shortage of teachers, and the possible reason is that many want to be on the technical track, which is essentially teaching, the love for teaching, and the purpose that they get from the work of teaching and educating, the young ones gets sidetracked or gets overruled or taken over by the admin work that they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And think about marketing, business, salespeople who are given admin work and how that takes their numbers away because they don't see why they need to do it, right? So that the
Yep.
daily task that sucks energy away from people, right?
From
So
them
anyway,
doing work.
so that's Nancy, and of course Catherine is really sad because she really doesn't know what she's doing in the company. So this is one that I joined this company because I need a job and I need the money, right? So you can see that she's totally off. And if you're listening in and watching this, you can ask these questions where you are in your job.
Mm.
And if you're a leader or a manager, you can also think about this for your employees, right,
Mm.
Sham? So, with that,
Yep.
we hope that we've done some justice in the last 1 hour. Why purpose is really the most important thing for us to get our business going and right. And Sham,
Mm.
next month we are going to do it differently, right?
Yeah, we're going to do it differently. Just a last point on purpose. You gave some wonderful examples about how it's not just about the money; it's something else that drives people and motivates people, right? And in order to know what is it that drives people and motivate people, we need to measure something. So we need to know what we want to measure and then measure it, right? And it's not the measurement that's important. It's not the numbers that's important. It's what the numbers bring out in the conversation. So if you're finding it, how do I have this conversation? Sometimes it's useful to start with measuring something and that then using the results to have a conversation. It just
Mm,
is a door opener. It gives us insights that no matter how long a conversation we have, we may not be able to get to it, but you get to it and move the conversation to important parts rather than unimportant parts.
nice.
So something to think about, something to mull over. I hope we've given you some food for thought, some things that confirm some ideas that you have, some things that maybe give you ideas that you need to investigate. As Malar said, next week or next month, August, we are doing something different, not just a theme, but we're going to shift the program from 8 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. Singapore, Malaysia time in the evening. All right. And Malar and I are experimenting. After some time, we get bored with something and we change it. All right. So it's going to be 6 p.m., ladies and gentlemen. You will know this. We will talk about it. We will inform you. We'll remind you as well. In August, we're going to talk about recruitment, and we have got some interesting guests lined up for you. So join us. Let's talk about recruitment. Let's talk about how we can make recruiting for talent more efficient and less painful.
Nice. So see y'all 6 o'clock next Thursday, 6
Yes,
p.m. All right. That's it.
Malaysia, Singapore. All
All
right.
right.
But
So Singapore, I will see you next week at 6, not at 8. Yeah, 6
nope,
p.m., 6
nope.
p.m., 6
Yep.
p.m. Till
Yeah, I
then,
think I'll come with a glass of wine. Okay, bye.